So welcome everybody to Four Questions. My name is Kevin Deutsch, and I'm a journalist covering Jewish community issues in Missouri and across the U.S. Tonight's Zoom event has been organized by Jewish community member David Palatnik with the aim of helping voters make informed decisions on Election Day. Missouri residents will cast their votes in the primary election on August 6th, choosing from a slate of candidates for the state's top offices as well as seats in the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives. The candidates who win their primary races will face off in the general election on November 5th. Between now and the election, we'll be asking candidates four questions to get a better understanding of their positions on four topics. First, their position on Israel and the rise in the number of anti-Semitic incidents in Missouri since Hamas's October 7th attacks on Israel. Second, their position on abortion rights and the potential constitutional amendment that Missouri residents may be asked to vote on in November. Third, their position on crime prevention and public safety in Missouri. And fourth, their position on how best to stimulate economic growth in the state if elected. Today, we're pleased to host Mr. Jay Ashcroft, Missouri's Secretary of State and a Republican candidate for governor. Mr. Ashcroft, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to get underway here and just start out with your positions on Israel and October 7th. Since that date, the U.S., as you know, has seen an unprecedented rise in anti-Israel hate speech and vandalism and anti-Semitic acts targeting Jews and institutions with connections to Israel, including synagogues. At the same time, we've seen a record number of anti-Semitic incidents impacting Missouri's Jewish community as well as Jewish communities across the United States and the world. In some cases, anti-Israel protesters have singled out Jewish Missouri residents for intimidation and exclusion. We've also seen police, in some cases, providing public safety protection to protesters who use anti-Semitic signage and rhetoric, which has become also a controversial issue in Jewish communities. So, Mr. Ashcroft, what is your position on the Israel-Hamas war? And if elected governor, what will you do to protect Jewish residents in Missouri?
Well, I mean, it was an attack by a terrorist organization against the people of Israel. It is wrong what has happened to the people of Israel. The people of Israel need to do whatever it takes to make sure that they can be safe and that they won't endure attacks like that in the future. I think that there are some in the political realm that have really pushed a false narrative of a false understanding of proportionality. Proportionality doesn't mean you're only allowed to kill as many of them as they've killed of you. Proportionality means you're allowed to do whatever it takes to protect your people from being attacked again. And I'm thankful that the leadership of the state of Israel, the nation of Israel, is unfortunately, well, I'm thankful that they're ignoring the bad suggestions they're getting from the president and our federal government right now. They need to do whatever it takes to make sure that the people of Israel can be safe for the future. With regard to what we're seeing happen around the world and in the nation and in Missouri, unfortunately, I was a part of that myself. The consul general from Israel for the state of Missouri came to Missouri. We had a reception after he spoke to our legislature, and I've met him several times because we've worked on some things, especially with the Missouri School for the Blind. And when I was trying to go to that reception, I was actually attacked by Palestinian protesters and had to throw one or two of them to the ground before they got arrested. It's terrible what's happening, this idea that people are judged because they're Jewish. And we, as a nation and as a people, we should abhor that. And look, I'm a Christian. And when I read the Bible, it says that the Jewish people were the apple of God's eye, his chosen people. And I want to be on God's side.
Thanks for your answer, Mr. Ashcroft. Our next subject is abortion rights, which continue to be a cultural flashpoint in Missouri and across the United States. In some other states, including Kansas, constitutional amendments have appeared on election ballots and been voted on by citizens. And that seems to be the route we may be taking in Missouri, where a proposed constitutional amendment could lead to legally enshrining the right to abortion in the state, and also giving power to the legislature to enact laws uh, as well. Currently, abortion in Missouri is almost entirely banned. So my question for you, Mr. Ashcroft, is if a constitutional amendment does appear on ballots and passes in November, will you, if elected governor, sign legislation reflecting the will of the voters? Or do you anticipate the issue will continue to be debated in the legislature before the abortion law is changed?
Well, the first thing I should say is that if you're talking about the initiative petition that was filed and signatures were turned in to potentially go on the ballot in November, it would not allow the legislature to put in place rules to protect or restrictions to protect the health or livelihood of a mother that was undergoing an abortion. The potential amendment talks about the ability to do that, and it's either, I don't have it in front of me, it's like the second or third paragraph, but then it takes that away in the fourth paragraph after that. What we are talking about is a bill, or sorry, a constitutional amendment that would allow abortion on demand at any time for any reason, that would prohibit any regulatory protections for a mother undergoing an abortion, and that would prohibit any recourse by a mother or the mother's estate if a mother who undergoes an abortion is injured or killed or mutilated getting an abortion. I am not in favor of abortions. I'm endorsed by Missouri Right to Life. I believe that life begins at conception, and I believe Missouri should be a state that makes sure that the child in the womb and the mother carrying that child have the support and resources to make sure that both of them can do the maximum of their God-given potential. And I will always fight to protect life in the state of Missouri.
Thanks for your answer, Mr. Ashcroft.
Not the answer you wanted, but that's who I am.
Well, we're here to get your take, no matter what your take is. I think we just want to have an open forum and get to know our candidates. So we
I appreciate that.
appreciate you being frank with us. Next, I want to ask you about crime in Missouri. Kansas City saw a record number of homicides last year, and many Missouri residents say public safety is an important issue in this election. If elected governor, what are your plans to address crime in Missouri, and how do you balance improving public safety with the support many residents have shown for policing reforms and alternatives to incarceration?
Well, I believe if you were to ask me what my top three priorities for governor, one is education freedom to making sure parents control that. Number two is public safety. I believe it's a core responsibility of government to provide public safety for the people. I've been sued multiple times by the mayor of Kansas City because he wants to reduce the funding or have the ability to reduce funding for police in the city of Kansas City. I fought him on that, and if he continues to sue me, I will continue to fight him on that. I put forth a plan that would get us truth in sentencing in our state, where when you actually do the crime, go through due process and get convicted and sentenced, you actually do that time. So it gets you off the street so you're not continuing to commit crimes. On average, right now in the state of Missouri, when we release you from prison, you are going to commit 8 to 9 more crimes. Well, no, I misstated. You're going to return to prison 8 or 9 more times. So that's countless number of other crimes you're going to commit to go back to prison 8 or 9 times. We need to put a stop to that. We need to make sure that we have prosecutors that will actually prosecute criminals instead of turning a blind eye to that. We've seen that in the city of St. Louis. Thankfully, we have a good prosecutor there now, Gabe Gore, but we've had problems with prosecutors that would not prosecute. We need to make sure we can get special prosecutors and remove prosecutors that will not do their job. I've also put out a plan to get 1,000 new officers on the street in the first year. Some of those we can train here. Others will have to be people that we've pulled from blue states that say, hey, wait a minute, I want to be in Missouri. They will provide for us. They will have our back when we have their back. I've also called for the state of Missouri to take back control of the St. Louis City Police Department. They are defunding their police. They are understaffed. The police do not have the resources. Police get to their district to patrol, and some mornings there aren't even cars they can use because there aren't enough cars that work for them to actually get out among the population and protect the people. I believe that good police are necessary for a free society. They are necessary to protect us from those that would do evil and allow us to make decisions and live our lives as we choose. I believe it's one of the biggest issues for our state, not only for the citizens we have here, but we have to get that under control if we want to have economic growth for the future so that your children and mine can stay in Missouri instead of being our largest export to other states.
And a follow-up question for you, Mr. Ashcroft. Given that St. Louis has been ranked on some list among America's most dangerous cities,
Yes.
based on crime data and other measurements, what public, in addition to the 1,000 police officers you plan to put on, more additional police officers you plan to put on the streets in Missouri if elected, what public safety measures do you support that might help get St. Louis off of those lists?
Well, the biggest one is truth in sentencing. We have criminals that are getting sentenced to 10 years in jail and they deserve it because of the rap sheet and the crime that they committed. And yet they're being let out of prison within 2 years, if not a year. That's ridiculous. When people are committed to committing crimes, we need to lock them up. Right now, we have a problem with our prisons. Every time a prisoner is sentenced and shows up to prison, we have to let someone go. I've worked with the budget committee and local sheriffs on how we can take care of that overcrowding and have the staff to actually staff our prisons and lock up criminals that have decided they're going to be criminals. But we also need to do some things with mental health. I traveled I go to every county in the state every year. In 2022, I specifically made a focus on talking to prosecutors, police officers, deputies, sheriffs, judges. And what I heard over and over again was 95% of the crime they deal with is drug or mental health related. And we have got to get a handle on mental health services. We have got to find a way. There are a large group of individuals in this state that could be living productive lives as tax paying, law abiding citizens if they just had a halfway house where every morning they took their medicine and every night they took their medicine and they could actually be productive citizens. So truth in sentencing matters, making sure we're prosecuting criminals, making sure that we have places to house them so they actually stay there, making sure that we actually trying to rehabilitate them. I talked to prosecutors across the state. They would talk about individuals who had a rap sheet and had a new conviction and that were about to be convicted. And they also had a drug problem. And the prosecutor could say, look, I'm either going to offer you 120 days of rehab, which, if you know anything about drug rehab, 120 days generally isn't long enough to have a whole lot of effect, but it's better than nothing. They could offer them 120 days of rehab or 4 years in prison. And you know what their public defender would suggest? The public defender would tell them to take the 4 years in prison because they would be out of jail faster. Think about that. We have a criminal justice system, and I hate to call it that because it isn't that incentivizes offenders not even to get the help that they might be able to use to become law-abiding citizens and never return to incarceration again. That's a problem. It's a process problem, and we need an engineer that knows how to fix processes so that we're actually teaching the people that we can't rehabilitate everyone, but we ought to be rehabilitating the people we can so they don't come back.
Thanks for your answer, Mr. Ashcroft. For our fourth and last question, I want to ask you what you think about Missouri's economy, both present and future. What areas of our economy do you feel have potential for the largest growth? And how would you, as governor, support those areas or industries in the state?
A couple of things. I think that there are three things that we need to do if we want to jumpstart our economy. Missouri has been a laggard among Midwest states. About the only state we can consistently beat is Illinois, and we don't always do that. The three things that I think would really make that change: one, putting the money for education in the hands of parents to make sure their children actually can get a challenging education. Number two, it's public safety. We have a problem with people that want to start businesses or are looking to move businesses. They won't come to Missouri because when they Google Missouri, they hear about the crime in St. Louis. They hear that St. Louis is rated, or sorry, that Missouri is rated to be the most dangerous state in the country for males of color between the ages of 18 and 45. We should be ashamed of that. That is horrific. So we've got to change education. We've got to change public safety. And number three, we got to cut taxes. Our state government, our budget has ballooned by over $20 billion in the last 6 years. Nobody in their right mind would say that they feel like we have twice as good a government now as we did 7 years ago. And yet our budget has essentially doubled. I put out a plan that will get rid of our state individual income tax. We're targeting 6 years. We may be able to do it faster. It may take a year or two more. You get rid of our state individual income tax, you do public safety, and you do education, and that will light a fire under Missouri's economy. If you're looking for a place that the state has underinvested in that could make a real difference, historically in Missouri, we've looked at our rivers as problems. They're problems because you have to build bridges over them for roads. What we ought to look at the Mississippi and the Missouri as opportunities. We should be building the largest inland port in the nation just south of St. Louis, so that containerized cargo is actually coming all the way up from the Gulf of Mexico on ships specifically built for that in phase one. And then in phase two, slightly smaller version ships are used to take containerized cargo all the way from that port up the Missouri River, at least as far as Kansas City. That would drastically cut the importation cost of goods or raw materials and the exportation costs of the same, which would be a great boon for businesses, for agricultural interests, and everyone else in Missouri. We finally have the ability to do that because the bridges have been raised. For decades, they made sure in Louisiana that the bridges were too low, so you couldn't do that. We need to take advantage of that opportunity. It's going to be done somewhere. It's better if it's done as far north as possible, which is probably right around the St. Louis area. But if we don't do what we ought to do, it'll be done in Illinois. It'll be done in Memphis. It'll be done in Arkansas. That's a real opportunity for the state that we ought to be investing in.
Thank you for your answer, Mr. Ashcroft. So that takes care of our four questions, but I do want to, before we finish, give you the opportunity to address any other issue you feel is important to voters in this election. And at the same time, and I meant to do this at the beginning of our event, I wanted to give you the opportunity to share a little bit about your bio because you have such an interesting bio. Your father was Attorney General John Ashcroft, and he was the governor of Missouri and held other high positions in the state. And so I was, and you've also obviously you hold public office, and I was hoping you could share a little bit about your bio, and at the same time, also just talk about any other issue or policy that you're passionate about that you think voters should be aware of going into the primary.
You said that so much more nicely than saying I can't hold a job for more than 8 years. But I do have a varied background. I grew up in politics. My father was in politics, rose to a pretty high level as the United States Attorney General. He was an attorney. My mother was an attorney. My older sister was going to school to be an attorney. So I was the 17-year-old that said, I'm never going into politics. That's how you make God laugh. I'm never going to law school. I'm going to get a real job and I'm going to be an engineer. So my background is actually in engineering. I have 2 engineering degrees from the University of Missouri. Well, it's Missouri Science and Technology. When I went there, it was University of Missouri Rolla. Out of college, I worked in the defense industry for 4.5 years as an engineer on a vehicle for the Air Force. Then after that, I spent 6 years teaching mechanical engineering and mechanical engineering technology in St. Louis. While I was doing that, I got married, and most people would say I went to the dark side because that's when I decided to go to law school. My wife wanted to go to law school, so I went at the same time with her. Went to law school, practiced as an attorney for about 8 years. I graduated in 2008 and just got fed up with what I saw happening in politics, with people saying one thing and doing another, saying good stuff in even numbered years, but doing bad stuff in odd numbered years. So I ran for office, was elected Secretary of State, have been Secretary of State almost 8 years now. I think the thing that I would point out is a lot of people are going to talk about a lot of things, and not all of them are going to be true. As Secretary of State, I have a record of actually accomplishing policy and moving policy. I've moved more policy than any other statewide elected official has. When I came in, the Heritage Foundation rated Missouri's elections. They said that we were 11th in the nation, which isn't that good. We moved ourselves up to being in the top 3. I bring that up just to say I ran on election integrity and the need for government issued photo ID so that people trust our elections. And we've done all sorts of things from banning drop boxes and banning ballot curing and making the paper ballot the official ballot of the state and photo ID and other things so that people can trust their elections and know that the legal registered voters of the state make that decision. When it comes to things like libraries, I've led the way to make sure that parents are in charge of what their children are seeing at libraries. I don't think I should determine what your children are looking at libraries. That's up to you as their parent, but I wanted to make sure that parents were in charge of that. I've done some kind of nation leading things with regard to securities to make sure that Missourians were actually in charge of what their securities were invested in. And I've pushed back on what some of the securities industry would say they could choose what's best for you. And I said, no, the people of Missouri, it's their money. The individual investor gets to decide what's best. You have to disclose it to them. And if they say yes, that's good. But if you don't disclose it, or if they say no, that's fraud and we'll come after you. When it really comes right down to it, I'm a lot more of an engineer than a politician. I guess I'm learning not to look at my shoes. But my political belief is this: I don't know how to run your life better than you do. And I certainly don't know how to run the lives of everybody in this state. And as an elected official, every day I get up and my mission is to create more opportunity for you to have more decisions that you get to make however you see best benefits you. And that's what I think Missouri needs. That's what I think the people of Missouri needs. Someone that will stand up to allow them to make their own decisions and meet the maximum of their God-given potential. And I really appreciate you making time for me.
Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, we really appreciate you joining us. We want to thank everybody who joined our event tonight, and we hope you have a great night. And Mr. Ashcroft, thanks so much for stopping by and giving us your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Had a great time. Y'all have a blessed day.
Take care.